When we are young, time feels like a vast ocean, endless, shimmering, and still. A single summer can stretch into forever. The scent of grass after rain lingers for days. A week feels like a lifetime, yet somewhere along the way that ocean begins to shrink. Days start to slip past us like water through cupped hands. Suddenly, the years fold in on themselves. Birthdays arrive too soon, seasons blend together, and the months between them vanish like a dream upon waking. Why does this happen? Why does time seem to run faster as we grow older? Scientists have measured it. Philosophers have questioned it. Artists have painted it. But deep down, we've all felt it. That quiet acceleration of life's rhythm. When we were children, a single afternoon could contain an entire universe. Now, whole years seem to pass between two breaths. Is time itself changing? Or are we? Imagine standing on a hill and watching clouds drift by. When you're young, each cloud feels like a story, a shape to follow until it disappears. But when you're older, you no longer see the shapes. You just notice the shadows moving faster than they used to. Perhaps it's not that time moves differently. Perhaps we move differently through it. Children live inside the present moment. Every sensation, the taste of fruit, the glow of morning light, the sound of laughter, is new, and so it expands to fill their awareness. Adults, on the other hand, live in the overlap of memory and expectation. We spend our hours comparing, planning, recalling. The present shrinks, squeezed between what was and what might be. What if our perception of time is not a measurement of seconds and minutes, but of meaning? When life is filled with discovery, time slows to match our wonder. When life becomes familiar, time rushes past, knowing we no longer stop to look. And yet, there are moments that still stretch. A sunset shared with someone you love. A song that stops you in your tracks. In those moments, time seems to pause, not because the world slows, but because we do. Maybe, just maybe, the secret to feeling time again isn't in counting it, but in noticing it. Because time, after all, is not what we think it is. It's not a river flowing past us. It's the space between our heartbeats, the rhythm of our attention, the quiet pulse of our own awareness. But if that's true, then what is time itself? Is it an objective force, a law of physics, or something softer, woven from the fabric of our consciousness? In the next chapter, we'll step beyond the ticking of clocks and into the mystery of what time truly is, both in the universe and within the human mind. So tell me, when was the last time you felt a single minute last forever? What is time, really? A physicist might tell you it's a dimension, the fourth axis of the universe, stretching beside length, width, and height. An astronomer might say it's the measure of motion, the rhythm of planets orbiting stars. And a philosopher might whisper that time is only the mind's way of organizing experience. A story told so existence makes sense. But for all its definitions, no one truly knows what time is. Albert Einstein once wrote, "The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." To him, time was not a flowing river but a vast landscape, a dimension where every moment, from the birth of the stars to the blink of your eye, already exists. You are simply walking through it, one moment at a time, like reading the pages of a book already written. But our minds don't experience it that way. To us, time is not a landscape, it's a feeling. It flows, expands, contracts, and dances to a rhythm that only consciousness can hear. Think of a clock. Its hands move in precise, measurable circles, marking seconds that never vary. But the seconds you feel, the moments of waiting, of wonder, of reflection, move at a pace no clock can measure. The physics of time is constant. The experience of it is anything but. Inside the human brain, time lives in 1,000 different places. Neuroscientists have discovered that our sense of duration, how long a moment lasts, arises from the coordination of memory, attention, and emotion. When your mind is deeply engaged, when your heart beats faster, your brain takes in more information, and so time appears to slow. When you drift through routine, when days blur together, your brain records less, and time seems to vanish. In that sense, the brain doesn't keep time, it creates it. Our consciousness is not a passenger within time. It's the artist painting its motion. Each second stretches or collapses depending on how alive we are within it. That's why an hour of childhood exploration feels endless, while a decade of adulthood slips quietly by. But even deeper than that, there's a mystery that physics and neuroscience have yet to solve. Why does time move forward? The laws of the universe don't demand it. They work equally well in both directions. So why do we remember the past but not the future? Why can we look backward through memory, but never ahead through imagination? Perhaps it's because memory gives direction to our lives. Without memory, time would not flow, it would stand still. The arrow of time, as physicists call it, might be nothing more than the trail left behind by consciousness itself. When you think about it, time is not something that happens to us. It's something that happens within us. It is not a current we drift along, but a reflection of our own changing awareness, a mirror that reveals the movement of thought and the unfolding of experience. And if that's true, then maybe time doesn't speed up or slow down. Maybe we do. So what happens, then, when we stop measuring time altogether? When we close the clocks, step away from the calendar, and simply exist? Not in the past, not in the future, but in the pure stillness of now. Does time disappear? Or do we finally meet it? Not as a ticking hand, but as the quiet heartbeat of the universe itself. Close your eyes and remember the sound of summer when you were young. The air humming with insects, the sun standing still, the way a single afternoon seemed to unfold forever, as if the world itself had stopped to watch you play. Time then was not measured, it was felt. Each day was an entire world. A morning of discovery, an afternoon of wonder, and an evening that glowed softly with the promise of tomorrow. But why did those days feel so long? Psychologists believe that when we are young, every moment is new. Our brains are still learning the language of the world, its colors, textures, sounds, and rhythms. Every experience etches itself deeply into memory, expanding the sense of time that holds it. A child's mind doesn't just pass through moments. It inhabits them completely. Think of how a child watches raindrops race down a window. Each drop is a tiny universe, full of suspense and beauty. In that suspended gaze, there is no yesterday, no tomorrow, only now. That's the secret. For a child, the present moment is the entire universe. As adults, we remember our childhoods not because we took more time to live them, but because time lived more fully within us. Every sensation, every sound, every smell was new, and the brain, flooded with novelty, stretched the perception of time to fit the fullness of experience. Neuroscientists call this the novelty effect. The more new information the brain processes, the more expansive time feels. When you're 5 years old, almost everything is unfamiliar. The first taste of snow, the first sound of thunder, the first realization that the moon follows you wherever you go. Each moment is a lesson, and so time becomes a vast classroom without walls. But beyond the science, there's something deeply poetic about childhood time. Children don't worry about how long something takes. They care only about what it feels like. An hour waiting for a friend feels eternal. A whole day spent exploring feels like a breath. Time bends itself around curiosity. As we grow, this ability to lose ourselves begins to fade. We trade immersion for awareness, wonder for schedules. But when we were children, time was not something to manage. It was something to marvel at. Maybe that's why memories of childhood glow with such golden light. We weren't rushing from one thing to the next. We were inside each moment, unaware of time's passage. The laughter of friends on a playground, the glint of sunlight on water, the smell of rain on warm soil. Each sensation was a world large enough to live in. And then something shifted. Slowly, the world became familiar. The patterns we once studied with fascination became routine. And when life becomes predictable, the brain stops recording so much detail, and time begins to slip by unnoticed. But what if that endless feeling of childhood isn't lost? What if it's still waiting, hidden beneath layers of habit and hurry? What if, in moments of true attention, when we listen deeply, see clearly, and let wonder return, we can touch that same timeless awareness again? Because maybe childhood isn't gone. Maybe it's a way of seeing, a way of remembering that every sunrise, every sound, every heartbeat is new, if we're willing to notice it. Adulthood arrives quietly, not with ceremony, but with calendars, with alarms that ring at the same hour, every day, with lists, appointments, and a rhythm that repeats itself until the edges of life begin to blur. It's not that the days grow shorter, it's that they start to look the same. As children, we lived through seasons of discovery. As adults, we live through cycles of repetition. We wake, we work, we plan, we rest. The scenery changes, but the motion repeats. And with repetition comes compression, a gentle folding of time, like pages pressed too tightly together to read each line. Scientists call this temporal compression. When life is routine, our brains stop encoding the small details that make moments distinct. We drive the same route to work, prepare the same meals, answer the same questions. Days begin to mirror one another until memory, that delicate painter of time, runs out of new colors. It's strange to realize that the same number of hours can feel shorter depending on how we fill them. A child's day, packed with novelty, stretches endlessly. An adult's day, shaped by familiarity, contracts into a blink. We often say, "Where did the week go?" Or "Wasn't it just New Year's?" But time hasn't gone anywhere. It simply moved past without leaving footprints, because nothing new pressed into its surface. Think of time as clay. When you're young, every experience leaves a mark. The clay is soft, receptive, alive. But as we grow older, the clay hardens. Impressions fade faster, and moments pass without form. Routine gives us stability, but it also smooths the texture of life. It's comforting to know what tomorrow will bring, and yet, it's that very certainty that erases tomorrow's individuality. Our memories thrive on difference, and when the differences fade, so does our sense of time. Still, there's beauty in the quiet rhythm of adulthood. Not all repetition is loss. There is peace in patterns, the morning light through the same window, the familiar hum of a kettle, the laughter of someone you've known for years. These rituals are anchors, keeping us steady in the ocean of passing days. The challenge is balance, to let routine hold us without letting it close around us. Because time does not only move, it breathes. And when life becomes too predictable, we stop breathing with it. But what if the way to slow time isn't to escape routine, but to see it differently? To wake up not to a new life, but to the depth of the one we already have. To notice how sunlight shifts, even on the same street. To hear how silence sounds slightly different each morning. To remember that no moment, however ordinary, will ever return exactly the same. Perhaps that's the quiet wisdom of time. It doesn't ask us to chase novelty, only to wake up to presence. Because presence turns repetition into rhythm, and rhythm, when listened to closely enough, begins to sound like eternity. But if memory gives life its length, and attention gives it its depth, what happens when memory itself begins to fade? When fewer new experiences leave fewer marks behind? Every life is made of two kinds of time. The time we live and the time we remember. We often confuse them, believing that a year full of hours must also be a year full of life. But the truth is, we only truly keep the moments that stay in memory. Everything else, no matter how long it lasted, simply dissolves into the background of existence. This is why time seems to move faster as we grow older. It's not that the clock spins quicker. It's that fewer moments leave their mark. Memory, after all, is not a recording device. It's a storyteller. It doesn't capture every detail. It selects, compresses, and rewrites. And the more similar our days become, the less the storyteller has to say. Think about a single year of your childhood. You can probably recall dozens of distinct scenes. A birthday, a new school, a first friend, a lost tooth, the smell of summer air after rain. Now think about a recent year of your adult life. Can you remember as many moments with that same clarity? Probably not. When we stop doing new things, the mind stops making new chapters. And so, when we look back, those years collapse into one another. A blur of mornings, meetings, and passing seasons. Psychologists call this the reminiscence bump. Between the ages of roughly 5 and 25, we form more vivid and lasting memories than at any other time in life. Why? Because everything is new. Every experience is a first. As novelty fades, memory quiets, and with it, our sense of time. It's not age that shortens our lives. It's familiarity. A year filled with new experiences feels long because it fills the mind with detail. A year spent in repetition feels short because it leaves little behind. But memory does more than record. It also shapes. Our past becomes the mirror through which we measure our future. When the mirror grows blank, the future loses contrast, and time, without distinction, speeds up. And yet, memory isn't just about what we do. It's also about what we feel. Moments charged with emotion, joy, awe, sorrow, love, anchor themselves more deeply in the mind. That's why even in a repetitive life, a single evening can expand into eternity if it's filled with meaning. So, perhaps the key to slowing time isn't in chasing constant novelty, but in deepening memory. By feeling each moment fully, allowing it to press its fingerprint into the heart. Try to remember the last time you saw a sunset and really watched it. Not as a passing sky, but as a story, one that began before you were born and will continue long after you're gone. That act of noticing, of allowing a moment to matter, is what stretches time. Because the more fully you live a moment, the longer it lives within you. The fewer memories we make, the faster life moves, but the more deeply we experience them, the more time we truly have. It's as if memory and time are two sides of the same fabric. One woven from what happens, the other from what we keep. The less we weave, the thinner life feels. The more we remember, the more it expands. But even memory is not immune to the passage it measures. As we age, the mind itself begins to change. Its rhythms slow, its patterns shift. And with those shifts comes an entirely new relationship to time. One not shaped by the outside world, but by the quiet inner workings of the brain itself. If time is the fabric of existence, then the brain is the loom that weaves it. Every tick of a clock outside us is mirrored by a silent rhythm within. A pulse of attention, a flicker of memory, a spark of awareness. And as the body changes with age, so too does this inner clock. When we are young, the brain hums with intensity. Neurons fire rapidly, and the world floods in through every sense. Sound, color, motion, emotion. Each second feels full because the mind records it all, storing every sensation as if it were precious. But as the years pass, the rhythm slows. The neurons still fire, but not as urgently. The senses still open, but not as wide. And so, the flow of time inside us changes tempo. Neuroscientists have found that a child's brain processes more new information per second than an adult's. This heightened activity stretches the perception of time. Every moment feels larger, denser, richer. By contrast, as the brain matures and becomes more efficient, it filters out the familiar, leaving only what it deems important. The result? The mind takes fewer snapshots of experience, and time feels compressed. It's not that life speeds up. It's that our minds take fewer notes. Imagine your perception as a painter. In youth, the brush moves slowly, filling the canvas with fine detail. Each leaf, each shadow, each nuance of light. With age, the painter's strokes grow broader, capturing the outline of things rather than their texture. The painting of a day becomes simpler, beautiful still, but less intricate. And so, in memory, that day seems to have passed more quickly. Another element shaping our sense of time is dopamine, the brain's messenger of novelty and reward. In youth, dopamine surges easily, responding to new experiences, new faces, new discoveries. But as we grow older and life becomes more predictable, dopamine's spark fades. Without that spark, moments blend together, and time seems to rush by unannounced. Attention, too, plays its role. When we focus deeply, our awareness slows the rhythm of perception. When we drift, it speeds up. Meditation, creativity, and even love can shift the brain's state so profoundly that minutes feel like hours, or vanish completely. So, time is not just external. It's neurological, emotional, biological. Each of us carries a different rhythm, a private metronome hidden behind the heartbeat. And yet, even as this inner clock slows, another kind of awareness begins to grow. In aging, while the brain becomes less driven by novelty, it gains depth in reflection. Moments may feel shorter, but their meanings grow richer. We begin to see time not as an endless path forward, but as a circle, each moment echoing others, each memory resonating in the present. Perhaps the slowing of the mind's clock isn't a loss, but an invitation. A call to live not faster, but deeper. To pay attention to the spaces between things, the pauses, the silences, the transitions, because within them lies a gentler time, one that no clock can measure. Time in the brain is not linear. It is elastic, fluid, alive. It bends around meaning, stretches with attention, and contracts with repetition. And when we understand this, we begin to see that controlling time isn't about managing schedules, it's about managing awareness. But there's another layer, one not purely scientific but emotional. Certain moments, love, awe, joy, grief, seem to open a door beyond the ticking of seconds. They make time stop or stretch or shimmer. How do emotions, those quiet architects of memory, reshape the flow of time itself? There are moments when time dissolves. A sunrise you'll never forget. The soft stillness after someone says your name. The heartbeat that bridges two people before a kiss. In those moments, the clock seems to hesitate, as if it, too, is holding its breath. This is the power of emotion. It does not simply color our experience of time, it creates it. Psychologists have long noticed that emotionally charged events, whether joyful or profound, feel longer while they're happening and remain brighter in memory. That's because emotion deepens awareness. It pulls us entirely into the present, into the living pulse of the moment. When we feel deeply, the mind records in high resolution. Every detail, every sound, every glimmer of light is etched into memory. Time expands to make room for feeling. Think of falling in love. Hours disappear, yet each second feels eternal. The world seems sharper, more vivid, as if reality itself has turned its face toward you. Or think of the first time you saw something vast. An ocean, a mountain, a night sky full of stars. That sense of awe, of standing before something greater than understanding, stretches time into stillness. We are most aware of time when it stops behaving like time. Scientists have even found that when the amygdala, the brain's emotional center, is activated, it strengthens the formation of memories. The heart, quite literally, makes time longer. And yet, emotions also compress time. When we're bored, hours crawl. When we're in flow, fully immersed in what we love, they vanish completely. This paradox reveals a truth. We don't live inside time. Time lives inside our attention. That's why moments of meaning seem to suspend it. Because in those moments, we are no longer measuring, we are being. No past to recall, no future to anticipate, only the infinite now. Emotion is the bridge between time and timelessness. It gives weight to seconds and softness to years. A single minute of true connection can feel more real than an entire week of routine. A song that touches you can linger for decades in memory, replaying long after the sound fades. Maybe that's why we return to our most emotional memories again and again. Not to relive the event, but to revisit the moment when time slowed enough for us to truly feel alive. Our emotions mark the constellations of our inner sky, turning life's timeline into something more luminous. Without them, time would be an empty corridor. With them, it becomes a cathedral, echoing with the sound of our own hearts. So perhaps the meaning of time isn't found in its passing, but in its intensity. In how much of ourselves we pour into each instant. When we love deeply, create passionately, or stand in quiet wonder, we stretch the seconds into eternity. It's not time that passes quickly, it's attention that slips away. But when emotion roots us to the present, even a heartbeat can feel like forever. And this raises a question both scientific and spiritual. If emotion can slow or even suspend time, could awareness, deep, sustained awareness, do the same? There are moments when the world falls silent. Not because sound disappears, but because you do. Moments when thought and time melt into one continuous breath. Painters know it. Musicians, meditators, and dreamers know it too. It's called flow, the state in which time loosens its grip and awareness becomes weightless. Here, the seconds do not pass. They unfold. To the outside observer, you may be sitting perfectly still or moving with purpose. Inside, however, the boundaries of past and future blur into a single radiant now. In this state, the mind stops counting and starts being. Neuroscience calls it transient hypofrontality, a soft dimming of the brain's self-monitoring regions. But poets might call it the return to eternity. The ordinary mind divides before and after cause and effect, but the meditative mind dissolves division entirely. It does not resist time. It becomes one with its rhythm. You can touch this stillness in many ways. In meditation, where breath becomes a universe. In creation, when the artist disappears into the act of making. In nature, when the waves of the ocean seem to pulse with your own heartbeat. Even in quiet moments of reading, thinking, or love, whenever attention becomes absolute. During flow, brain waves slow, heart rate stabilizes, and sensory input sharpens. We take in more, not less, yet it feels effortless. The mind stops measuring because everything feels enough. Time, in that space, becomes circular, not rushing forward, but folding inward, reflecting itself like ripples on still water. And when we emerge, we often say the same thing. I lost track of time. But perhaps what really happened is that we found it, not as a sequence but as presence. Because time does not vanish in flow. It simply reveals its truer nature, an unbroken continuum of awareness. Mystics across traditions have described this same experience. The Zen monk sitting in silence, the Sufi dancer spinning into trance, the writer lost in words. Each, in their own way, is not escaping time but entering its essence, the timeless moment that exists within every passing one. In meditation, the sense of self fades, and with it, the anxiety of time. When there is no I to measure, there is no before or after. There is only the rhythm of being pure, continuous, infinite. Even modern physics hints at something similar, that all moments exist simultaneously, that time may not be a flow at all, but a landscape our consciousness moves through. And in those rare, still moments of total presence, it's as if consciousness stops walking and simply sees the landscape as a whole. Flow shows us that the quality of time depends on the quality of attention. When we are distracted, time fractures. When we are centered, time unites. And in that unity, life feels whole, not rushed, not delayed, but perfectly in tune. Perhaps this is the secret the sages were pointing to all along, that enlightenment is not beyond time, but within it, hidden in the very seconds we overlook. But if time can dissolve in awareness, if it can be stretched and softened by the mind, then what does that say about time itself? Is it an independent reality, or a reflection of consciousness, shaped entirely by the observer? If you could step outside of time for just one moment, what would you see? Would you watch the past, present, and future spread before you like pages of a single book, each already written, each forever unfolding? Or would you find that there was never such a thing as before or after, only one continuous, infinite now? For centuries, philosophers and scientists have wrestled with the nature of time. Is it something that exists independently of us, flowing onward like a river? Or is it something our minds create, a way of stitching change into a story we can understand? Einstein hinted that time is not an external current, but part of a vast fabric space-time, where all moments coexist. From this view, the future is as real as the past. It simply occupies a different coordinate in the grand geometry of being. We don't move through time. We move within it, like travelers shifting awareness from one star to another in a boundless sky. But if all moments exist simultaneously, then why do we only experience one at a time? Why do we remember the past but never the future? Perhaps because consciousness itself is linear. We perceive in sequence because perception needs contrast, the movement from one image, one thought, one heartbeat to the next. Our minds are storytellers. They translate infinity into narrative so we can live inside it. Maybe time isn't the stage upon which life happens. Maybe time is the language life uses to speak to itself. Think about it. Every memory is a preserved version of the present. Every dream of the future is the mind's attempt to imagine another now. Even our sense of the past is built from fragments reconstructed each time we recall them. The timeline, then, might be nothing more than consciousness organizing its own reflections. The Buddhist texts describe the universe as a single, unbroken moment, eternal, shifting, self-aware. In that vision, time is a dance of perception, not a march of seconds. The present doesn't move forward, it simply changes form. And yet, we cling to clocks. We measure, schedule, plan, because structure gives shape to the mystery. Without time, we wouldn't know how to be human. Without the illusion of tomorrow, there would be no hope, no growth, no story to tell. So maybe time is both real and imagined. Real because we feel its rhythm in the body, the seasons, the heartbeat. Imagined because it exists only as experience, not as substance. Like music, time is meaningless without someone to listen. Some physicists now argue that time itself may emerge from quantum entanglement, that what we call the passage of time is really the unfolding of relationships between particles, observers, and memory. In simpler words, perhaps time is not out there. Perhaps it is between us. And that thought changes everything. Because if time is born from relationship, then meaning slows it down. Connection, love, attention. These are the true clocks of the soul. Maybe eternity is not endless duration, but perfect awareness. A state where past and future vanish, and only being remains. So, if time is a construct of consciousness, then to understand it is to understand ourselves. We are the architects of duration, the dreamers of continuity, the observers that make the universe aware of its own unfolding. But that brings us to one last question, the most human of all. If time can be shaped by mind and heart alike, can we truly change how we experience it? If time is not fixed but felt, if it bends around memory, attention, and emotion, then maybe the great secret is not in escaping it, but in experiencing it differently. Maybe we cannot control the number of our days, but we can shape the texture of the moments within them. To live slowly is not to move without speed. It is to move with awareness. The world does not need to change its rhythm, only our attention does. When we are truly present, even a single breath contains infinity. Think of your life as a mosaic. Each day adds a tile, and the spaces between them. Those pauses of stillness, those quiet, uncounted moments, are what give the picture its meaning. We rush so often to finish the mosaic that we forget the art is in the placing. Science suggests we can shift our perception of time simply by shifting how we live. Try something new, learn, travel, listen deeply. Novelty expands the mind's sense of duration. But there is another, subtler path. Not chasing more, but noticing enough. Meditation, gratitude, reflection. These slow the mind's clock, allowing the heart to breathe. Time expands in awareness. It contracts in distraction. When we pay attention, when we truly see the moment, the way light rests on a wall, the sound of someone's laughter, the feeling of air filling our lungs, the seconds open up like petals. And within that bloom, life reveals its depth. Perhaps the purpose of understanding time is not to conquer it, but to make peace with it. To see that we are not running against the clock. We are the clock, every beat, every thought, every change. The ticking we hear is the pulse of our own becoming. Even memory, that gentle keeper of time, is not about preservation but presence. Every time we remember, we re-experience. Every time we dream, we reimagine. Time lives wherever awareness meets meaning. Imagine living as if each day were both the first and the last. Fresh with discovery, yet rich with gratitude. Wouldn't that make time infinite again, the way it once felt when we were children? We cannot add more hours to life, but we can add more life to our hours. And perhaps that is what time has been trying to teach us all along, that it is not an enemy to outrun, but a companion to listen to. Because when we slow down enough to listen, we find that time isn't rushing past us. It's waiting patiently for us to arrive. And maybe, at the end of all our measuring and wondering, the real question is not how much time we have left, but how deeply we can live within it. So let me ask you one last thing. If you could hold a single moment forever, not in memory, not in a photograph, but in pure awareness, what moment would it be? And would you recognize that, in truth, you already live inside it, this eternal unfolding now?